Welcome, everybody, to the F4 Hunger Awareness Show.
It's my goal to feed 1 billion people before I die.
We want to bring awareness around the issue of hunger and food insecurity.
7 to 8 million people served so far. With the sole goal of eradicating world hunger by connecting sources of food to recipients in need. Fiorenza's Food for Friends.
Hi, Derek Fiorenza here on the F4 Hunger Awareness Show, and I've got two great guests today. One you recognize, Mr. Joseph Giandonato. Hi, Joe. How are you?
Hey, how's it going? Happy Friday to you.
You've contributed some really great content recently, and I know you also do the blogs for us, so we appreciate that. Joe is PhD, MBA, CSCS, an exercise science faculty member, and just a wealth of knowledge. He's also been my trainer. We got to get back on that, Joe. That's on me, not on you. But I appreciate your support over the years.
Yes, sir. Hey, and we'll hold you accountable publicly. Let's set aside some time, this weekend, maybe Sunday, or at the very latest Monday to get back on track, to map out a schedule moving forward, especially with, a hectic fall upon us both.
Yeah, and as we're gonna see our next guest, Mr. Mark Mulray, he's gonna share some really neat stuff today. I'm gonna give his background in a second, but prior to our conversation, we were just talking about things like our heart, and you can't like see it like a broken bone. You can see that bone's broken. The heart you can't really see it just from the human eye, and the idea of being able to make our lives healthier with exercise and nutrition. Some of what we'll cover today, and then Mark's gonna provide some actual information around that and how we can measure those outcomes. Because at the end of the day, it's great that we're busy, we have a lot of commitments, but if our health goes, we can't do anything. We can't help feed those that are hungry. We can't take care of our children, our wives, our husbands. We can't take care of our job and our responsibilities. So health is really the fulcrum for everything else that we do. With that said, here's Mark's background. Mark is the CEO and co-founder of a company called Thrive by AI. So it's really innovative. It's kind of cutting edge. We're going to talk about their website today. Mark spearheads innovative solutions in the healthcare space, and he does this by leveraging AI to foster healthy behaviors. And I feel like Mark and Joe, we hear the word AI so much. It's become much more common, whether you're trying to get information on a trip you want to take to a cool country or a different state. Plan out my route. Go ahead, Joe. What are you gonna say?
I was gonna, yeah, I was gonna say anything, but we have become, conditioned to it and indoctrinated with it, and I think that a lot of folks were hesitant to adopt it or embrace it, but it's something that is a value add for our daily lives, and Mark's gonna speak to that more eloquently than I will, of
Yeah.
course.
Well, that's why we're glad to have him here. Additionally, through his journey, he's acting as the COO for a company called Healthwell Solutions, where he played a crucial role in driving strategic initiatives and spearheading growth. These contributions led to the company's successful acquisition last year. So that's really awesome. Mark, congratulations on that. Additionally, his commitment to the workplace, specifically in the wellness space, is evident in successful program implementations. Now, listen to this. At Fortune 500 companies like Comcast, Aramark, and healthcare giants including Nemours, AI DuPont Hospital for Children, and Thomas Jefferson University. So, what we're going to be able to dive into today has been tried and tested by some of the largest companies and organizations in our country. So, really a privilege and gift to have Mark with us. In addition to his accomplishments professionally, he has served on industry and community boards, contributing to improving wellness education and accreditation standards. I think that's really important, Joe. A lot of the information that you share, we talk about anecdotally, but one of the things I like, Joe, with whether you're doing the posts or a podcast, you're always supporting it with scientific data.
For sure, and and really, Mark is a consummate professional, and there's an evidence base to everything that he's done with Thrive by AI, and in our time as friends and also colleagues, I've been really impressed by his empirically driven strategies and certainly some proposed solutions that we've discussed while working with different organizations and supporting clients throughout the years.
That's awesome. Some of his additional roles that he's served on, he was or is the board of visitors for Sampson College of Health Sciences, the Council on Wellness Accreditation and Education for the National Wellness Institute, the Medical Fitness Association Marketing Subcommittee, and the board of directors for Parkwood Youth Organization. So part of what we'll do today too, Mark, is I'd love to dive into those four uh, philanthropic initiatives. I always say, our life, and I say this at a macro level, our life here, it's really short when you look at history. And you can have a successful job and you can make money, but the most important thing is, caring for other people. And I define that with one simple word: impact. You could use the word influence as well, but the ability to impact the lives of others in a positive, constructive way. And when you're able to combine business and philanthropy, you're combining, terrific strategy to really impact society for the better. Lastly, and wrapping up here, we talked about accreditations, Joe. Dual master's degrees, an MBA in healthcare administration, and an MED in exercise and sports psychology. Wow, Mark, I want to hear about that journey too. Um, his academic dedication continues to shine through with his work. Beyond his professional pursuits, Mark also enjoys outdoor activities with his wife and children. He coaches youth sports and he competes in endurance events. That's pretty cool. So we'll have to figure out what that really means. Two-time Ironman and has completed multiple marathons, a Boston Marathon qualifier, and he's completed a 100-mile ultramarathon. Where do you have time to do all this, Mark? I feel like I'm getting ready to talk. Joe, I feel like we're getting ready to bring David Goggins on. Where do you have time to do this,
Next,
Mark?
it's a next progression.
See,
Hey, it's incredible
I mean,
because
what a
Well,
I'll see
thanks
those
for having
Facebook
me on,
posts,
guys.
Mark, and it motivates me. It motivates me to, like, what, I haven't done anything today, and I saw that you
ah,
just crushed, the Broad Street run. So I'm going to get out there and, I'm going to try my best. I'm going to try to tackle, 4, 5, 6 mile run. So it's inspiring.
Well, I
that's
appreciate you
amazing.
having me on, and it's really not that inspiring, but I really do appreciate it. One thing I usually say that people kind of like shake their heads at is I've never been bored in my adult life. Not one time ever.
I'm
There's
not
always
surprised.
something to do, even if it's just stopping and taking a couple deep breaths and just kind of thinking about what's next. I don't get bored. I don't watch a lot of TV. I put the Phillies on in the background and I read. I'll probably finish 60 books this year. Some audio while I'm out for runs and whatnot or on the bike. But that's just sort of how a little bit of the method to madness.
Well, Mark, I want to start like from childhood. So let's go all the way back. What gave you and when you were being growing up, what gave you this desire, this drive, this motivation to do more, to be more, to excel, not just in one area, but in so many? Take us through your background growing up.
Sure, no, that's great. Well, I grew up in Northeast Philadelphia. I always loved learning. I was a pretty good student in high school, and then became a sort of A student in college where I wouldn't accept anything less. So I went from being in high school just being okay, you know what, I'll get by easily, just kind of attend everything. And in college, like I started like 5 hours a day, reading 5 hours a day and just like which burning at both ends, working three jobs, and that's sort of now with three kids, that has served me well. The ability to sort of like task switch and just have a lot of irons in the fire, if you will.
What was the reason for that switch? You went from wanting to get by in high school to wanting to dominate in college.
I don't know. I don't know. But just started reading a lot, getting. I had a liberal arts background to
Yeah.
start with, so it wasn't all science classes. Yes, anatomy and physiology and whatnot, but a lot of philosophy and sociology and psychology and history classes. So I loved having that sort of broad background, and sort of how I got into the MBA. That was 10 years after the exercise and sports psychology. I always knew as an undergrad I didn't fit in with those who were in sort of the counseling psychology track, but I did like, enjoy the health psychology field, learning motivation and sort of what makes us tick. So that's where I went into exercise and sports psychology at the time. um, was managing larger and larger programs, facilities, multi-unit facilities, things like that. And that's where I realized I don't have much of a business background. I need to go and fill in some of those gaps. And that's where I started looking at programs and ended up on the MBA in healthcare administration to sort of fill some of those gaps.
Amazing. So you get to college and you said you're working 3 jobs, right? And you're studying
Yeah,
5 hours a day. Are you training at this point? Are you working out?
always,
Okay, so that never
always.
stopped. When did that start?
I'm 45 now, probably when I was 13.
Okay,
I started lifting weights and then that turned into when I was about 19 or 20, started running. But at that point I was like playing basketball 2 or 3 hours a day and I was a gym like Joe, we were probably all gym rats.
Yeah, yeah, of course, still am. But
Yeah,
where did you find time in the day to do all this?
right. Working 3 jobs.
start early and go late. Start early and go late. Yeah, I was just like I said, I was burning at both ends through college.
Mark is a black hole on the far edge of the universe, and he's bending time.
That's
So that's the way he accomplished it.
so. What did you do around time management when you were in school? You were managing these jobs. Were you doing like block scheduling? How were you doing it? Like take me through that organizationally.
So the first thing I would do when let's say undergrad, as soon as I walked in the first day of class and the syllabus was handed to me, I would read through it really carefully and say, what does this professor want from me? What do they want?
Wow.
Do they want like someone who's raising their hand every 10 seconds? Do they want someone who's like a rock star when they're writing paper? Like, what are they looking for? And then just deliver it to them, right? So I was always one of the things I did in high school was like I said, I wasn't a great student in high school, but in high school I was sitting in the lecture and doing my homework for the next period. And then like I was always just kind of like doing that. And in college that turned into when everyone else was on spring break, I was writing the paper that was due the last week of the year so that I can spend all day and all night like every waking moment studying for the final because I had the paper written 6 weeks ago. So those are the little things. Just don't waste time,
Yeah. So you were
right?
picking up time. It's like sounds so much like what Elon Musk does. Like he would sleep at the office under the table because he said, I heard this interview. He says everybody's working 40 or 50 hours and I'm working 80 or 100. By the end of the year, multiply that by 10 years, I've done that much more work than the
Yeah,
next person.
Hey,
yeah,
it's analogous to Kobe Bryant, where he would wake up 3:30 in the morning, begin working out at 4, and he was able to condense 5 years of preparation within 1 or 2 in comparison to some of his peers, and that's what made him so much better and really the next generation's Jordan, if you will. You know,
yeah,
Great analogy, Joe.
yeah.
I
His
heard
work ethic is great.
he had an
yeah.
insane workout. I heard that guys would work out with him and they would get to the gym and they thought they were getting there earlier and he would start going earlier the next day and he would always try to be the first one and he'd beat the person if they were working out with him in the morning. He always
Yeah,
made sure he had already worked out or was starting his workout.
Yep. And when guys would sign their contracts over the summer, I forget what podcast I was watching, but he said, "Hey, get prepared to black out." And we're like, "What's blacking out?" They're like, "We're just gonna work out all summer, like just tune everything out and focus on the next season." So, I really think that Mark, you have a little bit of Kobe in you. He's another Philly guy, like the three of us, and I think you're a good precursor to David Goggins. He's the next guest that we need on the show for sure.
That'll be down the road. I bought the book by Tim Grover. So Mark, you're familiar with Tim Grover? Was Jordan's trainer. He was Kobe's trainer and Dwayne Wade's trainer. And he was just talking in the book about like winning never sleeps. And it's like not that everything is about winning, but everything should be about improving yourself, like that
yep,
pursuit of better. And Ernest Hemingway had a great quote. He says like, "Don't ever compare yourself to somebody else. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday."
Mhm.
exactly,
It's like, okay, so I
exactly.
can live with that. Then that just becomes about effort,
Yes,
right? It's like someone
that's
has more
it.
money, someone has more achievements. It doesn't really matter. Where was I yesterday and where am I now? And where was I last year and where am I going to be next year? It takes the whole paradigm and then it shifts it. In addition to that, it allows you to operate from a place of peace where you're happy for others' success because it doesn't take away or detract from you. You're focusing on your own success, which is completely
That's
separate and not tied to that.
Exactly right. And not to deviate too far, so we could route it back to Mark's journey to where he is
Yeah.
today. but society's become disillusioned by what they
Bingo.
see on social media, and then also the talking heads on LinkedIn, where hey, like this TED talk, or I'm going to share this or share that. It's just like, bro, do you have a full-time job, or like what impact are you making outside of, just, throwing out some random post? I'm guilty of it, but I'm usually doing that intermittently throughout the course of the day, my phone, when I have, some free moments, as do we. But it's just like some people, they see what I would really, consider to be kind of false prophets, and I don't want to get biblical here, on social media, and they're leading this life, which is really kind of perfect and infallible, waking up at 3:30 in the morning. But wait a second, they have a camera with a tripod, and it's really over the top, and that's something that really can't be replicated, and it's certainly not, sustainable, and it sends this malign message to folks that want to get in shape, that want to get healthy, that hey, I have to go this route. And sure enough, that's really kind of the antithesis of moderation, and also self improvement, and what Derek said, where you want to incrementally improve each and every day, and you're competing against yourself. And something that I learned, in grad school from one of the texts that I read was, what organizations do, and they adopt a blue ocean strategy where they're really not concerned about their competitors.
Bingo.
They're concerned about what value they can provide, their customers, what they can do to retain their customers, what they can do to differentiate themselves from others. And and I think three of us, embody this quality, even if we never verbalized it, where I don't really care what Mark or Derek are doing. I do as for as a friend, I'm here to
Right.
help them,
Right.
but I'm not competing against them. I'm competing against myself. And I also understand that, progress isn't linear. It's almost algorithmic. There's going to be ebbs and flows to everything. I may have a bad workout. I need to bounce back from that. I may have a bad work day. I may have an awful meeting or an awful lecture, or have written an awful, article. And I just need to bounce back from that. And I think that, resilience is also, key, in being successful as a student, as you were, and also as a professional. Otherwise, the three of us wouldn't be here, and you certainly wouldn't be here today to tell your story. So let's get the story back to Mark and his journey, because this is really interesting. I don't know where you found the time to do everything that you did during undergrad.
Yeah, well said, Joe. So yeah, Mark, so take us through that. So you get your degree, you've somehow managed your day, you worked three jobs, and you graduate. What do you do next? What's the next step in your journey?
Well, it was interesting. It's at the time through undergrad and through my first master's, I was working for a law firm, and it was great. It was a great experience, fantastic. Met a lot of folks who I'm still friends with today. But at some point, I realized it wasn't my calling. Like
Mm,
a lot of my parents and a lot of people close to me said, "Oh, just go to law school. Like you've been there long enough." Just it wasn't my. It was never my calling. So I decided not to, and I've never looked back. I always wanted to help people. That's always been a common thread. Now with the youth sports, with our Thrive by AI endeavor, employee health and wellness. So it's always been about how do I add value to others? How do I leave this place better than I found it?
mm. So you come out of school and you were working with a law firm and you thought about going to law school, but you decided that's not where you were being called. You didn't feel like at peace. What did you do? Where was the pivot?
First, you know, I would say the first full-time job I had out from that was running Comcast Fitness, and that's when I met Joe the first time, running the Comcast Fitness Center for a company called Healthies that at the time managed all their fitness.
So what did that
Um,
entail? You started working for Comcast as a contractor or
we
as an
were,
employee?
yeah, we were a contractor. I started when the first building in Philly, the first uh, skyscraper down there was still a, sort of a construction site. It wasn't quite
Yeah.
100% done yet. People were still moving in. So we had to start it from the ground up as far as procuring all the equipment, the staff, the scheduling, um, you name it, the building out the site, you know. So that was great, and we learned a lot. And what I found through being there for about 4 years is we were doing a lot more than just fitness. We had health fairs, and we were supporting lactation programs and mental health programs and yoga. And that's when I decided to say, you know what, we can do it more than just fitness. We can do an overall wellness and start looking more around the healthcare systems. And
Hmm.
that's where I ended up with the Moore's DuPont Hospital for Children with their wellness program there down in Wilmington.
Got it. So just backing up for a second, you were working for a company. What were they called? The contractor?
Oh, Healthies at Comcast. It's called
Okay.
Healthies. Yeah.
And did they only work with Comcast for the employees' fitness or other companies too?
Oh, they had a pretty several dozen clients. Yeah.
But you're focused with Comcast.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
you were providing services to the employees. Have been to health fairs before, but you were providing ongoing services so the employees could tap into you for support.
Yep.
So what would
Exactly.
they come up to you? They say, I need help like getting healthier, losing weight. What would they getting stronger? Everything and anything?
Yeah, that was our primary role there was fitness, but we started to do a lot more than just fitness as far
Okay.
as yoga classes and all types of different programming for them.
And what did you learn from that experience? You were in this role directly connecting with employees and you're providing them a way to live healthier. What did you learn from those 4 years?
You know, I'll go the easy one, right? Uh, a lot of what I took from, I really learned exercise and sports psychology. I focused on adherence to exercise.
Hmm.
Why does one person like Joe exercise every day of his life, and then the other person, his next door neighbor, never exercises? And a lot of times it comes down to something simple. We would see this a lot at Comcast. Somebody would walk in during lunchtime, and 30 seconds later, they would walk back out the door, and they would say, "I'll see you later. I'll see you tomorrow." They forgot their shoes, they forgot their shorts, they forgot their change of clothes, and a lot of it just comes down to making those little small decisions, making it easy for yourself, lowering those barriers so that you can actually do what you want to do. They were motivated. They actually got there. They made the time of their day, but they just couldn't get their stuff together enough to bring their shoes, right? And I would say that every day, at
Hmm.
least a handful of times every single day. And I really that always stuck with me because um, it's an important lesson, right? We're well intentioned, we want to
Mhm.
exercise, we want to do what's right for us, but sometimes life just gets in the way. So what are some of those little life hacks that we can do? And we do that now with some of our solutions that we've built, like teaching people, giving them practical, pragmatic advice on a micro level every day. What is something I can do to reach my health?
So it sounds like what you learned there was intention met barrier, and you from there thought of ways that you can start helping to remove those barriers for people.
Absolutely. You have to lower the barriers as far as possible because there are so many out there, so much friction out there to make the healthy choices. And we talked a little bit about this before we started, as far as fast food and
Yep.
just all the different temptations that are out there. And now with the digital distractions, it's just like easier than ever.
Joe, how do you like you he mentioned you work out every day. How do you get that in? Because you've got two kids, you're teaching full time. I mean, you work like crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm a Mark light, perhaps. In terms of just, being able to extract time, during the day. But, really what it comes down to is, self-efficacy.
Hmm.
And, you can look at a lot of the work, from, Albert Bandura was kind of the father of it, so to speak. Looking at, the social cognitive theory, of course, and self-efficacy being a large component of that, because self-efficacy or belief in oneself, and confidence in one's abilities is really going to be derived from having foundational knowledge, being able to apply that knowledge, but moreover, being resourceful and resilient, especially when there are some, adverse challenges or some, competing demands, so like, for instance, when I was, training at, corporate facilities, or I maintained a gym membership, or the times where I was overseeing, strength and conditioning programs at the high school and collegiate level, and also overseeing recreational facilities during my time in campus rec. Is there would be times where, hey, I'd forget my shoes, but guess what? I was lifting in a pair of
Mhm.
loafers, or I was lifting in a in a pair of dress shoes, or ripping dress pants during a heavily loaded set of RDLs. But a lot of people, they don't have the wherewithal, maybe, or they're not as resilient, or they're not as resourceful, or especially like if you were to apply, Proshka's trans-theoretical model of, behavior change, these are some folks that are now, in the preparation, if not the action stage. And it's like, you know what? Hey, I forgot my pants or I forgot this. I'm not gonna, ask someone for, another, pair of, pants or a pair of shoes, or I'm not gonna wear my dress shoes. I would not advise, squatting in stilettos just through the anterior pelvic tilt and certainly, the propensity to lean forward in a squat, but I digress. I never have and never will probably. But, getting back to it, it's like if you have someone that is resourceful, then they are going to, tap into their portfolio resources.
Mm.
Is it a friend? Is it, hey, you know what? I'm going to go down to Payless. I'm going to go to Ross. It's yellow tag at Marshalls. I'm going to buy a cheap pair of Reebok shoes, and I need to get this workout in. And that's one thing that I found, having done personal training for a number of years, is those folks that cannot, galvanize the resources around them. And really, it's poor or insufficient resource management that leads to folks being inconsistent. So it's not necessarily motivation, because motivation is something that is fleeting, that it's ephemeral, it's temporary.
Mm.
I hear a song, I hear, an epic from Two Steps from Hell or Audio Machine, or maybe like Rap Before It Started Sucking about 15 years ago, maybe some Young Jeezy. All right, I'm ready to get after. I'm ready to train hard.
Right.
That's motivation, and that comes and goes. But you need to make sure, that you're driven and that you're focused, and all the greats have talked about it. Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, David Goggins. And again, you need to make sure that you have a higher degree of, self-efficacy, and you can tap into some of those resources, and you're resilient, in times of stress. And also too, it's like there are days where I may only have 15 minutes to, go on, a run. And I'm like, okay, well, let's try to shoot for 2 miles over this hilly terrain, which also includes, warm up. And I'm really getting after it like a 6:30 pace. And there are days that I have like that, where I may only have, 35 minutes to get in a workout, and I time it, and it becomes, a density session. So let's shoot for how many work sets I can fit within, an allotted period of time, whether it's 30 minutes or 35 minutes.
Yeah,
So
fatherhood will do that.
there you
Yeah,
go.
it will. And you have three. I have two. They're a little bit younger, but like I know that you're like I see on social media, and like you're going to a soccer game, you're going to like a baseball game, and like you know you you may not watch the Phillies, but you're going to a lot of games, so you have to fit in. You have to fit in the workout some way somehow. You
You got to
know.
do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but you
Mark,
hit the nail on the head
go ahead.
there with self-efficacy. I'm sorry, Derek, but yeah,
No,
self-efficacy is so important. And we've seen that, if you look at the literature, that to me is like the number one thing, whether you look at person A versus person B, who's going to exercise versus who's not. And the person who has that belief in themselves every time is gonna continue to exercise throughout their lifetime.
so Mark, Tony Robbins talks about push pull, and Joe referenced like push would be like the motivation. Pull is like it's your standard. It's no longer like a desire or I will do this. And I can say like for myself as a professional working the way I do, I find reasons sometimes not to, like I didn't get enough sleep or I've got too much work to do, and then it's like, well, you're only hurting yourself. So like my barrier to entry becomes like I have too much to do. Like I hate to say that, but I'm being honest and vulnerable with y'all, but like it's like that's what stops me. So I'm sure I'm not the only executive that's in that position where it's like, well, I've got 10 million and one things to do, but I should be prioritizing my health every single day the way Joe is, or maybe the way you are, Mark. What tips could you give someone like me or someone that like has every intention, they've got that motivation, it wanes, and then that pool is not there? What could they do to
Yeah.
build that pool into their standards?
I can start, Joe. I would say don't let a lapse turn into a relapse, especially if it's not like Joe is one of those when he was talking about exercising his loafers. There's a type that it doesn't matter if the gym is a hole in a dungeon, there's no lighting, there's no infrastructure. They're going to go out there and they're going to work out. But there are folks who are like, yes, there's a couple barriers. Hey, it's easier for me to just put my head down and work today. So even if it's small, even if it's a 5 minute walk, even if it's getting out, even if it's a couple push ups next to your desk, there is always something that you can do that to not let a lapse turn into a relapse.
Is that still beneficial, even if it's a little bit? Because
Yeah.
Absolutely.
go ahead.
Maybe not in the sense of, developing or, maintaining fitness qualities or biomotor skills, but it maintains the momentum.
Okay.
Because again, you're looking at all of these different, variables or covariates, you're looking at all of these, resources or lack thereof. But if you're active, if you're doing something, you're able to keep that going. You've captured lightning in a bottle, and now you're able to maintain it, for a longer period of time. So like a lot of folks, everything needs to be idyllic, where they have, okay, I'm going to go to the gym at this time, my pre-workout, this, that, the music has to be right, everything has to be right. And a lot of folks, that they allow, you know, um, you know, they allow really kind of imperfection, to kind of get in the way. And we always say that perfection is an impediment to progress.
Hmm.
And it's also a key component of procrastination. So just do something, you know whatever it is, in whatever amount of time that you have. And again, from a programmatic perspective and from a perspective of evoking improvements in some of those fitness qualities or biomotor skills. We talk about fitness qualities being, strength, being, muscular endurance, being cardiorespiratory fitness, flexibility, or biomotor skills where we're looking at, power, we're looking at agility, we're looking at, acceleration, we're looking at speed. Yeah, you're not really going to be able to improve those, especially if you are maybe highly trained, or you are an intermediate if you're doing just sets of body weight squats and push-ups alongside your desk at work, or maybe during commercial breaks at home. But it's something, and it's going to help keep you locked in.
So helpful. Don't let a lapse turn into a relapse. And perfection is the impediment of progress
Well, it's it's an impediment to progress, but it's
and
also
impediment to
an
progress.
impediment to getting started.
Okay. Very, very helpful. All right, so Mark, this is really good. Good content so far, guys. I mean, it's making me feel like, hey, even if I can't get the idealistic perfect setup, do something today, even if it is a short walk, because it's still doing something to keep that momentum going.
Yeah, absolutely. And the mental health benefits you're going to get from just that short break, as far as productivity, we tell ourselves, you can't stop for 5 minutes to do X, Y, and Z. But when you look at productivity, and if you're familiar with like the Pomodoro technique and all that, time management, you're going to be more productive in the long run if you
What
stop
is
every
that,
once in a while.
Mark, the Pomodoro effect? And then maybe we can research it offline, but what is that, just high level?
It's basically proactively stopping after 25 minutes, like doing 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off. So even if your head's down and being really productive, your productivity will wane after 35, 45, 55 minutes. So just stopping and taking that proactive 5 minutes and then going right back into it. And a lot of folks will schedule their time in those types of blocks,
That
25,
is
5, 25, 5.
that is so cool. All right, so back to your journey. So you get out of that company with Comcast. You're 4 years. What's the next step? The next leg of the journey?
I went to Nemours DuPont Hospital for Children and sort of managed their wellness program from DuPont. We had about 4,000 associates at the time there,
Wow.
and it was really growing. It was fantastic. It was a great. I always say you'll never find a place with a better mission than that. That and I'm a history buff, so anywhere any organization I've ever been with, is like, let me do the history on this. Like, where have they been? Where does the founder come from? How did they start? And I got into that as well because there is some history there, and that's probably a subject of another podcast. But
Yeah.
their founder, AI DuPont, was one of the cousins of the DuPont chemical company, right? And he made two fortunes in his lifetime. One, the family fortune that was basically built around gunpowder, which was a good business to be in when America spent its first however many years fighting wars,
Yep.
and then made a second fortune in Florida and I believe it was like paper mills and railroads. So really intelligent guy, and left his fortune to care for children and senior citizens and people who didn't have money for care. So at a time when before Security was invented or initiated, he was like cutting a check out of his own pocket to care for anyone in Delaware who needed care. And I don't think until the 80s they received any insurance money, something like that. It was like unheard of.
That's amazing. Well, I know Longwood Gardens, the Longwood Foundation was part of that. But
Mhm.
the what was Nemours? What are they known for? Children with pediatric children, pediatric cancer, children with cancer, or is that what they're other things too?
Yeah, they have centers of excellence, but children's healthcare, yep. And they also have another major hospital in Orlando, and then they're headquartered out of Jacksonville.
Oh, Nemours is headquartered in Jacksonville.
Yeah,
Did not know that. Okay.
yeah.
So you did wellness for the 4,000. You were an employee, but for the 4,000 employees there.
Yeah, yeah. So when I went there, I spent about 4 years there, and that was fun. But it was a long commute. It was like 45 miles one way
Wow.
through Philadelphia, like
Oh,
through Philadelphia traffic. And I remember the day where I'm like, you know what, probably not gonna do this anymore. My kids were young, and it was the Democratic National Convention, and they were just shutting 95 down
oh,
to shuttle the VIPs 3 miles down to the airport, and it was like, okay, my hour and a half drive just turned into a 4 hour drive. I can only do this so many days.
yep.
And I was like, at that time, going back to this sort of time management, I was doing my MBA program when I was doing
Yeah.
that commute. And I was like, um, writing papers by uh, just doing it by dictation in my phone. I would dictate a paper and then I would read it later and then, edit it and while I'm driving.
That's amazing. You had a will to get it done. So eventually, great cause, but eventually the commute was just too much. What was the next
Yeah.
step?
The next step was Healthwell, and I was there
Okay.
for 8 years and ran operations for them. We grew that company, so that was fun. We made a lot of contacts, and yeah,
What did Healthwell do?
employee health and wellness programming.
Okay. So then you were with them for 8 years and then moved on from there?
We sold the company
Okay.
back in 2023, so it'll be about 2 years, and then I co-founded Thrive by AI in September
All right.
of
So
2023.
we're
Yeah.
going to dig into Thrive by AI. One of the things we try to do on our podcast is to bring in ideas that are, original, but sometimes they're not. AI is a big buzzword. What does it actually
Mm-hmm.
mean? But there's a big focus on what we do with our charity around food insecurity and hunger. We're trying to create a world without hunger, but also educating people around fitness and health because it's all tied in. So I guess let's talk a little bit about the organization. I'm going to bring it up for those that watch on YouTube, your page, and then we'll kind of circle around to some of your other accomplishments philanthropically and with the fitness goals. But let's pull up your website here and tell us about Thrive by AI. What does Thrive by AI do?
Absolutely. Thanks. Yeah. So we create solutions that are geared toward employee health and well-being, HR and benefits space. We've got 10 different solutions now to do everything from help people, remind people when they need to get their preventive care, help people understand and navigate their benefits better, help them create, set, and attain healthy goals. So, healthy decision making, we have some built around fitness. We have some solutions built around mental health. Help people understand, um, the mental health risks and what resources they have available to them through their carrier, through their employer. So, a number of different solutions. We also customize AI solutions, um, and it's crazy in 2 years how much can get done. But we're still building, so we love it.
So we're on your website for those that are listening on iTunes or Spotify. We're looking at Thrive Assistance 4 pillars: preventative care, benefits, mental well-being, and workplace wellness. Can you take us through these four?
Yeah, absolutely. So our Thrive Assistant is our flagship solution. And if you have let's say you work for a large employer and you have a rich benefits package, then you might have a 75-page benefits guide.
Hmm.
And it's got so much in there. And even the folks in HR don't know what's in that guide because the vendors change year over year and a lot of what's in there changes. So what we did was we sort of went against the grain. We didn't want to be the 16th app at the end of the line. We don't have an app. We create and deploy everything through secure text messaging. So for our benefits navigation, we take the employer's benefits guide and we train our system on that. And then there's a dedicated text message line where they can just text and ask any question that they have around benefits. Um, since we're using AI, we can really personalize the experience. So regardless of which language of over 100 languages you're speaking, you're gonna be able to text in your own primary language. We're pulling in your barriers to change, which plan you're on, a little bit of your health literacy level. So all these different things that we can do to personalize using AI your experience, but also get the information to help you understand your benefits, and to be able to navigate them better. So that's benefits. For preventive care, working backwards from, what are the challenges that every single group we've ever worked with have? What's one thing that we could do, and if we could do it well, um, would really put a dent in the healthcare costs in this country. I don't know if people realize that healthcare costs are approaching 20% of GDP. They're something like
Wow.
18% right now, but they're going to be over 20%. And regardless of where you are on the economic spectrum, it's a tax we all pay, and it affects all of us. And if we could just snap our fingers and have one thing happen that would really put a dent in that, it's really for people to take care of themselves preventively, if they get the preventive care. And so we started to look at, well, what are some of the barriers to that preventive care? And what we did was we built out an API with the U.S. Preventive Task Force, which is the branch of the government that says here's the different tests you should be getting and when, what's indicated for you. And then we made a health assistant around that using that same number that you're texting to ask for benefits questions. You're going to get a nudge that says, "Hey, Derek, it's time for your annual physical,"
Mm.
right? Or it goes two ways. You can text it and say, "Hey, I had my vision exam today," and it will remember. It's not 50 clicks later. It's not trying to navigate some arcane patient portal. It's just text both ways. Or you can text it and ask it, "Hey, when am I due for my next tetanus shot?" Something a lot of people probably don't remember because it's few and far between. So those are the types of things that we can do around AI that are evidence-based, that are personalized, that can really help people make smart healthcare decisions for themselves.
It's like your personal consultant, your personal health consultant.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now we're not in the space. We're on the preventive and wellness side. We're not diagnosing, prescribing, or treating at
Right.
this point.
And you're not offering like a call line. Everything's via text.
Everything's via text, but so for the benefits, if you ask a question that you don't get the answer you're looking for right away, we have a ticketing system built in, so we can
Okay.
insert a human directly into the loop. So we don't want to take the human's job away. What we want to do is, those simple questions like, how do I change my password on such and such
Right.
benefit that I have?
Mhm.
Let's get that answered at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, because that's when you're
Mhm.
asking it, not at Monday at noon when the person gets around to it. Um, but also be able to insert a human in the loop for when the question is not answered immediately.
So, a good case in point, I work with employers on their benefits. I do retirement planning and group health.
Yep,
Should be a tool that the company would use, and then I guess there would be a way to then route additional questions to me for a one-on-one conversation.
exactly.
Makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah, if a question is not answered, and the great thing about AI is it's a tool that gets more sharp the more we use it instead
Yeah.
of dull. It's like, okay, here are the questions that are being asked. Um, One of the things we do provide is an admin dashboard, and what we're doing is bucketing. Here are some the different types of questions that are being asked, and then here are some gaps in knowledge that you may have with your group that you may want to address. So if you're doing a monthly meeting, if you're doing a webinar, if you need to do additional messaging,
Yeah.
here are those gaps because here's what's being asked.
That's what I was going to ask. Joe has a question. Go ahead, Joe.
So I have a quick question, Mark. Because I really haven't, dived into, Thrive by AI as much as I, should have given our relationship. But I do have, a cursory understanding of, what it provides. But out of curiosity, could you, partner with an organization, maybe establish a triage system where you may have, an employee, spouse, client member, someone that is, patronizing, Thrive by AI through the relationship that they have with the organization. Could they potentially use, Thrive by AI as maybe a triage system? I know that it doesn't provide any kind of diagnostic, services, but just say if they have maybe, a mental health crisis, or perhaps if they have, an issue that may warrant maybe, emergency care or urgent care that kind of extends beyond, the typical screenings that are covered by, the or indicated by, the U.S. Preventive Task Force.
Great question. And we do have something in beta that is, very closely related to what you're talking about as far as helping. It's more on the clinical side, helping the clinician make better decisions, right?
Mhm.
But that's not been released yet. But yes, we're
Okay.
working on those. We have assistants now. Where AI is going is full agentic AI, where you're going to have just multiple agents working for you around the clock at all times, and it's just getting it's that's coming.
And another question, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to, interrogate you. Is this something that could potentially be integrated with maybe, contracted, health coaching or nutrition coaching services where, again, this could potentially be the portal of entry, to those services. Maybe they fall under, the umbrella of, a comprehensive, wellness program. And we'll talk about, I guess, some of the elements of a comprehensive wellness program or where, some of them, miss the mark. But is this something that could potentially be integrated, with coaching, with, interventions, with, maybe, and again, it's a rather, antiquated approach in my opinion, but, biometric screenings and, also, health assessments. Is this something that could be, covered under that too?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't ever want a prospective client to say, "Well, we already have a comprehensive wellness program. This isn't for us. We like this, but this isn't for us because we have it." So that's where, since we're developing our own technology, we can easily plug into an existing ecosystem or platform
Okay.
simply. And it'll actually, to go back to your mention of health coaches, a lot of our clients are other wellness companies who are licensing our solutions because they realize, hey, this adds value to what we're already offering our clients. This complements what we do really well. We'll just license it, put our branding on it, and we'll sell it to our clients. So that's actually a large portion of our
That's
business.
awesome. That's awesome.
And I could speak anecdotally, but working with employers and employees, you want to create as many mediums for the team members to access the content and information. Some people respond better to text, some respond better to email, some respond better to phone calls. So
Yep.
this is an amazing tool. I think that, like you said, it complements what's being done. It's not there to replace it; it's there to actually enhance it.
Yeah,
Absolutely
yeah,
right
and
there. Because I'm sorry. No, continue, Mark. My bad.
I was just going to say, the conversation around AI has changed in the past 2 years since we started. And a lot of the times we don't even mention AI. We can have these conversations around what our tools do and never even say AI, especially for the folks who are sort of they're just kind of not ready to dive in yet. And what I say to them usually is you're already using it whether you know it or not. Every app, every platform, or your Netflix recommendations. Every time you click something, you're already using it. Maybe twice removed, but you're already using it.
Yeah.
We've been using AI for the past 2 decades, and and many of us been doing it, unknowingly through like NLP and data mining, and
Right.
which is kind of really like the nuts and bolts of AI. But Derek, you had mentioned, and again, just anecdotally, in your work with organizations where it's difficult to engage some folks, and what I found in my work is, and Mark can attest to this too, having stewarded and also having consulted employee wellness programs, is that low awareness is usually a hurdle, and that low awareness is due to ineffective promotion. It's also going to be due to ineffective or you know maybe messaging that isn't resonant, or maybe the messaging is it requires a high degree of health literacy, so it's really nuanced, and includes a lot of vernacular, or it isn't something that's going to be attention grabbing. And then of course we could talk about this ad nauseum, but leadership endorsement is a big hurdle, and all of those contribute to low awareness. So like having this app, I imagine, and maybe if you could speak to the effectiveness of it, have you seen like kind of before and after improvements in program participation by virtue of having not this app, I'm sorry, but Thrive by AI?
We have, we have.
Okay.
Um, it's difficult to say from your previous provider because your previous provider didn't have what we're offering.
Right.
But when
Yeah.
we're talking around wellness challenges, how we're delivering them, you're getting a unique link delivered either to your text message or your email. You don't have to remember a password. You're not forgetting where to sign in. You don't have to download an app. Those are all barriers. We've blown
Mhm.
those out of the water. Those barriers don't exist with the solutions that we're providing.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. I love how Joe Mark goes right back to empirical data. I love it. That's how
Yeah.
that's what he's trained. Like, so, like,
Always.
are you
He's,
measuring? It's like, but it's the
he's a
right way to
scientist.
approach
That's
things.
it.
It is.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's the right way to approach things. So with and before we go to the wellness and mental well-being, these four pillars, round those out. Um, the data that's being, I guess, transcribed back and forth via text message with AI and the participant, the employee, that data is secured, we said, but is it being stored anywhere so that it recalls this information? And then you mentioned the admin portal, so I guess the admin logs in and they see user activity and engagement, and they're seeing holes in their messaging, as Joe said, the word messaging. Maybe there's not enough awareness in certain parts. Is that being communicated via the interactions of these text messages?
Yeah. So we are recording those conversations in that to make it better, right? So how do we make it better? We know that Derek has these gaps in care. Here are his preferences. Here are his barriers of change. Here's the health plan that he's on. So in that regard, we have that as part of your profile, and that's just part of the course.
So, like, I talked to you, Mark, today, and now you know more about me. Next time I talk to you, I'm not reintroducing myself.
Yeah. So
Same concept
just going
there.
back to the AI, exactly. Just going back to the AI. AI is not new. It's been around 75 plus years. What is new over the past few years is democratized generative AI. It's you don't need a computer science degree or that knowledge to touch it. Or, you can many tools you can use it. You can build on top of it. Um, and this is there's a local guy here, Ethan Malik. He's a professor at Penn, and he has a great book. I think it's called Co-Intelligence, where he talks about the AI that we're working with today is the worst we'll ever have. Now it's pretty powerful, but it's true, right? It's the worst we're ever going to have. It's only getting better every single day, um, and it's really exciting. Like I would have said 2 years ago, AI was on par or with the invention of the internet,
Mm.
with the wheel, with fire, those types of things, the printing press. And now I'm pretty confident, history will AI will be more important to the human species, when we're talking on the long term.
As long as we can avoid a Terminator event.
I don't,
No, I don't mean to joke, but I'm just like,
I hope not.
seriously, like, that's a scary, like, you think the Matrix, the Terminator, they all push this idea, but you can actually see it start to happen. The robots.
Well,
but the same is true with any resource, in our civilization beyond our society is
Yes.
anything can be weaponized.
100%. Yeah. No, I'm not saying that you don't continue to, we need to continue to. I think the key is going to be staying in front of it. I don't know, Mark, what your thoughts are on that. Like, staying in front of the ever evolving technology.
we could probably have an entire podcast just on this, but I can say that the reason OpenAI was created, and Elon Musk was a big part of that before they made it a business when it was a nonprofit,
Yep.
was to keep AI safe because he does recognize it as an existential threat to the species. Say that much. But at the same time, the cat is out of the bag and it's not going
100%.
back in. So we might as well try to use this. It's probably the most powerful lever we've ever seen as a species. So let's use it to solve some of the issues like
Cancer.
healthcare.
Yeah.
Like healthcare, whether you like it or not, like you go to the doctors and you still see doctors that are, here's your CD-ROM with your images on it.
Mm.
Here's a paper form for you to fill out for us. Like we can do better. They're faxing documentation between doctors' offices. So like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
There are offices that aren't, high tech compliant, and the High Tech Act is, close to 20 years old now. So it's a travesty. And then also we look at, you look at some of the EHR systems that, leaned on, CDSS or clinical decision, support. um, solutions, years ago, and that right there, was a form of, AI. Helping, flag, contraindications as it relates to, medications. So it's very beneficial. I'm not trusting of someone that, completely, avoids, AI deliberately, just because it is a very powerful tool. It's something that, you know, everyone in a developed nation, and certainly an economic superpower, is using on an everyday basis, whether knowingly or unknowingly.
Yeah, good point. All right, so coming back to these pillars, Mark, so workplace wellness, we kind of touched on that. Anything else you want to add to it?
Yeah, I mean, for those groups that still want to have some kind of well-being program, but don't want a full-blown wellness portal because they've done it for 15 years and their employees just aren't going in there, we can track a wellness program if that's what they're doing through the same Thrive assistant. Hey, Derek, here are the
Yeah.
resources you have available to you. Here's how you access them. We can do some nudging around it, incentivizing around it. That's all easy and easily done through that same uh, ecosystem, if you will.
And then maybe just touch on mental well-being. You mentioned mental health a couple times. Just like it's amazing how much is not understood, or maybe it's understood, but maybe the better word would be lack of compassion, because so many people struggle with mental health and we seem to kind of push it under the rug, guy or girl for that matter. What do you want to say about this, maybe?
Yeah, I can say that we're not trying to make up or replace for someone who needs to or should be going to see a therapist and
Yeah.
going to seek clinical mental health. What we want to do is connect individuals and employees with the resources that they already have available to them. We also want to help them and give them. I'm a pragmatist at heart. We want to give them tools to better understand what their mental health risks are, right? So we have evidence-based assessments for stress, anxiety, and depression.
Hmm.
From there, we give an AI summary. Like here are some sort of corners you might want to see around, or some things you might not know based on your health risk. In addition to those resources, then we also have some chatbot tools that are built around um, helping you reframe ideas, thoughts, and ideas that you may have, helping you build some resilience, venting. So different chatbots for different things. But the whole point is for those individuals who are, for lack of a better term, in the green or yellow, let's keep them there. Let's give them some value added tools that even if they feel great, they can always work on. There's always something to work on. There's always something that they can do
Yep.
to help them, right? And for those folks who are in the red, let's get them the help that they already have. They just don't have access.
Right. So
Well, well
does
said.
this, yeah, exactly, Joe. Does this tool provide them um, like a list of potential therapists or psychiatrists that would be appropriate based upon their individual that responses?
It's what's available to them through their carrier, through their employer, through their health plan.
But
Yeah.
it gives them a list of who to contact or who's in that network.
Yes. Yep.
Now, this might be like I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm just curious. Would these recommendations of who's in that list be graded based upon the results that they're getting? So, like for example, I say to the AI tool, I'm struggling with this, this, and this. I'm a 38-year-old male. I'm not married. Would they then say ranking based upon who's available in your network? These therapists might be most conducive for your needs.
It's not because it doesn't. We wouldn't be able to pull that data from the therapist,
Oh, okay.
right? But if we had that information on that side, then it wouldn't be. That's not a heavy lift. It's really what making those connections is what's fantastic with some of the things we can do with AI, right? So if we had that library, let's say we had a library of 1,000 therapists and we
Yep.
had a little bio on all those, you might say, okay, this one you want a male or female, or you
Yep.
want someone who has a better understanding, or maybe as a parent, and or maybe who has dealt with substance abuse or whatever it may be, or has these types of things. That's easy. It's really easy. Or someone who maybe speaks another language.
Yes.
Yeah. But sometimes that information isn't available, whether it's through maybe health grades or Yelp or some other website, or even sometimes when you look at provider directories within health systems, or provided by some of the insurance companies. But if that information was there, you could build, that tool.
Do you see a market for that? And do you think there ever be a time where we will see that? This is theoretical, I know. So I'm just don't worry, Joe. No empirical review.
If I'm a consumer and I'm or speaking as a consumer, not a patient, someone looking for a therapist, I want to know as much about them as possible because we're gonna get really personal, and I'm gonna want to feel comfortable with them.
Yeah.
So
So
it's
having
yeah, absolutely.
and and also, I want to provide, some context, and Mark is, keenly aware, but anyone that might be stumbling upon this, whether they're a human resource professional or maybe, they're an employee, that they're not alone because, concerningly, half of employees, are experiencing stress on a daily basis. And, this data was drawn from or extrapolated from a Gallup survey back in 2024. 44 percent of employees are reported being worrisome. Roughly a quarter report being sad, and approximately 1 in 5 employees reported feeling angry or feeling lonely. Um, 27% of employees, if I recall correctly, reported feeling burned out. And the two elements of burnout are emotional exhaustion and also depersonalization. And then, another thing too is where, again, this is a great app. This is proprietary or great technology, rather. You look at different apps, you look at different, interventions. One thing that they will be able to identify, but perhaps not correct without, organizational leadership, is where you look at the imbalance between work demands and law autonomy, which lend themselves to burnout also. But again, I don't see this. I don't see concerns about mental health, particularly ones that emanate from the work setting. You know, disappearing or going away. This is something that's going to be present, especially mid some societal, political, and also economic uncertainties. And we're not going to go that route. Don't want to open up a can of worms here, but a lot of people have expressed some concerns, and a lot of that stress could be related to an imbalance between work life
hmm
and also maybe some family issues or dependent care issues. So again, just provide a little bit of context so that way folks know where know where we're coming from. And a lot of employers, a lot of Mark's clients, a lot of folks that you interface with, Derek, and I interface in my line of work, we have the same battle for the most part, knowing that nearly half of our workforce is dealing with stress.
So well
Yeah,
said, Joe. Yeah.
absolutely.
I played football at Villanova, and Coach Andy Talley, he was our head coach, and he used to say two things, but the one that's pertinent to today is it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. So what you're saying is like essentially having compassion for your fellow man or woman that, we're all going through something. And it gets reflected in the survey, Joe, that you referenced, the Gallup study. But think about it. People are lonely, they're anxious, they're depressed, they're sad, and there's just so much. What I've always found the best way to cure sadness, loneliness, whatever, is helping other people,
Yes.
which is why we do work we do with the food insecurity, which is why Mark shortly will touch on the philanthropic endeavors you have. But before we get there, this Thrive by AI, it's a complex website. There's, I guess, a couple. We went over the 4 pillars. There's a couple of products that you are offering. Can you just maybe high level touch on these products?
Yeah, sure. Custom solutions is a big one. So we have groups that come to us and typically say, hey, we think there's a use case here for AI, but we don't have the internal resources or know-how to build that. Here's 5 or 6 bullet points. Here's how we envision it. Here are the data feeds that need to be plugged into. Here's how it would work. And a lot of times we would mock something up or at least use that as a starting point for the conversation and end up building. And some of those have actually been outside of the health and wellness realm, just through referrals.
Got it.
Our hard age solution. So we're now doing a 30-second facial scan that can pull 22 different biomarkers. So it's again, a lot of folks, especially if they're in a remote environment, a work from home environment, they don't have the budget they had in the past to do full on-site biometric screenings. We can um, sort of get some health risks data and help people who may not be seeing their doctors and may need a little bit more clinical oversight or disease management through that tool. And that's really exciting stuff because that's something that's almost like out of Star Trek, but
So
the
what is
tech's getting better every day.
what is heart age?
So our heart age solution uses transdermal optical imaging. So it's using the lighting, bouncing light off your face, and being able to pull these different biomarkers like heart rate variability, blood pressure, through those subtle variations in skin tone that we can't see with the naked eye. And then heart age is it's going to actually give you one number. So basically, if you're 40 but you have high blood pressure and you're a smoker and you might be high BMI, you might have a heart age of 50. So it gives one sort of number to help individuals understand what their cardiovascular health risk might be.
So essentially it's more, focused or targeted version of, comparing someone's chronological age to their biological age, from
Exactly.
a cardiovascular standpoint.
That's it.
Interesting. And before, someone, before, a skeptic emerges, from the crowd, or they want to, maybe pierce holes and, the efficacy of a developing technology, is what I say to folks is it's something that is convenient. It's something that is providing some data points, because some data points are better than having none at all. For instance, you need a lot of data in order to make, I have this intersection outside my home where it's a dangerous left turn. So you want to make sure that your field of vision is not obstructed. But if I maybe have a car that's on the shoulder, I can't make that turn. But now if I'm able to look past that car, but I still don't have a complete field of vision, but I have just enough to see what, traffic is coming from the left, I'm able to maybe make a turn, and that's better than not having any vision at all.
That's
So,
it.
any data points, that we can go off of, are certainly going to be beneficial. I mean, is it going to be, are we looking at maybe like, lipoprotein A, score, or calcium score? Are we doing like a CT scan? Are we doing, 12 lead, EKG or stress test? No, but what I've found, in looking at reviewing, heart age, is it's definitely something that's promising, and may potentially warrant, another, maybe diagnostic tools, down the line. So it's going to compel some folks to take some action.
That's exactly the point. There are a lot of folks who don't have a primary care relationship and
Hmm.
they are out there and they're taking time bombs. And let's get them to go see, get them the help they need.
And it's those that are medically homeless who have resources in terms of having insurance, that are driving up, healthcare costs in the country, because a lot of times, it becomes, urgent, emergency, or catastrophic care.
Well, I did my math right. You said it's 20% of our GDP, right?
It's headed there.
Yeah, so that's what
It's
that's
about 18, I think now.
so that's in the trillions, right? Close to it.
Yes.
It's yes.
Yeah. So with this heart age, we talked about this before we got kicked off today. I specifically, I guess I will target this to Joe, but Mark weigh in. Let's say chronologically I'm 40, but as you said, I'm 50 with my heart health. Am I able to do anything about it, or am I kind of just, oh, tough luck? Can I actually improve that number?
There's always absolutely. There are always lifestyle changes that you can make, healthy habits that you can form that would help lower that.
Yeah,
And it may, Joe's
most
point, going to
certainly.
see a
and
physician.
and really, my interest has kind of been, directed, or, centered around this one, study, that, was shared with me. It is, Professor, Gary Pierce, and I don't want to get his institutional affiliation, incorrect, in the event that he sees this, but he's from, the University of Iowa, which is, an R1 research institution. And this, interestingly, is actually literature review. It's titled, De-Stiffening the Age of the Aorta with Regular Aerobic Exercise in Humans, Is it a Fact or a Fallacy? And Dr. Pierce's report, you know, as I alluded to a little bit earlier, it revealed a strong link between lower intensity aerobic exercise performed 4 to 5 days per week, and it showed that it reduced aortic stiffness, and aortic stiffness, and more broadly, arterial stiffness is going to be a predictor of cardiovascular disease. And it's also, a cause of developing, heart failure. It could lead to, high blood pressure. It could lead to kidney damage. It could lead to, a whole, host of things. But one thing that this review had reported on is that, employing, 4 to 5 days per week, of moderately or low intensity, aerobic exercise, was shown to, reduce, blood pressure, was shown to reduce mean arterial pressure, also has been shown to, reduce your heart rate, but also increasing in your stroke volume, and by virtue of that, increasing, your cardiac output. So, you're looking at, really cardiac remodeling, but you're also looking at, reducing, aortic stiffness. And, that right there is going to, improve, your cardiovascular health, significantly. So the aorta, then, and again, kind of going back to like anatomy and physiology, like 101 here, is the major arterial thoroughfare, within your body. So that is actually the really, really big artery. That's
Mm,
essentially what it is. That, you know, blood from the left ventricle is, coursing, having coursed into, and that of course, branches off to the left and right carotids. And then we also have the aortic arch, the descending aorta, the abdominal aorta, into, the iliac and also femoral artery. So, they aorta is feeding all of those arteries, so that way oxygenated blood can get to organs and also working musculature, to support and also to sustain life. And if we have reduced pliability or elasticity, or increased stiffness, that in turn is going to lead to kind of a maladaptive response. So okay, there's going to be a higher blood pressure, there's going to be a faster heart rate, just because now that aorta, kind of has reduced, filling capacity, so to speak, and doesn't really, have the ability to course, that oxygenated blood to parts of the body that need it. So exercise at any stage in the game. But one thing that, Dr. Pierce had reported on is that, that lower intensity aerobic exercise can improve or reduce aortic stiffness, at mid age, during middle age, which is critical. Now, there have been studies that have been performed on rodent subjects, and a lot of people are like, hey, why do you choose mice? Because mice are very similar, in terms of like genetically to humans, although they age, faster because they have heart rates that are, 8 to 10 times higher than our resting heart rate. Sometimes it's anywhere from like 400 to 700 beats per minute, which is why, mice in captivity or mouse in captivity is only going to live maybe 3 years at most. But this study that I'm referencing here, showed that aortic stiffness can actually be reversed following long-term aerobic exercise among mice aged 28, around 28 months. So, 2 years and 4 months, which is the equivalent to a 70 to 80-year-old human, because mice age, faster, as do many other animals, but not as fast as mice do. So that's, showing some promise right there. But again, at any stage in the game, if we're looking to improve our physiological work capacity, we're looking to improve, our moving capacity or biomechanical efficiency, engaging in, resistance training, which is, the foundation of modern day, physical therapy. And, resistance training is, has been hailed as a fountain of youth among medical professionals as well as exercise professionals. So while we may not be able to reverse aging, outright, certainly not, when you age chronologically, we can reduce, I guess, the age, so to speak, because exercise does, have some robust antioxidative properties, and can, reduce, biomarkers of inflammation, and looking at oxidative stress. Exercise, chronic exercise, has been shown to improve that. So yes, we can stave off age associated degradations in multiple systems within the body, and we could also reduce risk associated with developing chronic disease.
Wow. So I have a question for you, Joe, and a question for you, Mark. How long, if you start doing the moderate, like walking, some resistance training, how long does it take to reverse some of those trends? And then, Mark, my question for you is, if I did this, and let's say the amount of time Joe mentions, and I redo the test, will it show improvements?
Well, a couple things, and I want to look at, I'm going to, pose two different contexts. So we have the context of, health. We also have the context of performance.
Hmm.
So I'm, when we're looking at the individuals that we're serving, through maybe employee wellness programs, or when Mark and I were managing fitness centers and we were working, with personal training clients, our focus is on health. So studies have shown that arterial stiffness can be reduced, within 6 to 10 weeks, which would constitute longer term aerobic exercise. But improvements in overall fitness among detrained individuals can be realized within 2 to 3 weeks. Of course, we have to consider their age, chronological and their biological age, as well as their training age or training experience. There's 3 different ages that you would have to go by. And then we also look at, any sort of, medical conditions, which may, impact or influence their ability to adapt, or even to engage in exercise, because again there could be some contraindications associated with those conditions. So we can, immediately following exercise. And again, we have responses, we have adaptations. Some of those responses, include, increased, insulin sensitivity. And we have, better glycemic control, as a longer term, adaptation exercise, which, can be observed within, 2 to 3 weeks. Although again, it's something that can improve, sooner in individuals that may be younger, that may not have, a metabolic condition, or individuals that have trained previously.
Well said. I would say that there's always something you can do, no matter where you are in your journey, to help with that. And I think it's debatable as far as how much of our lifestyle contributes to our overall health, but it's over 70%.
Hmm.
And we're talking about healthcare costs, how much of those are directly attributed to lifestyle. There's always something you can do. I started my day this morning, Joe and Derek. I went out for a 9-hole round of golf at sunrise, and the gentleman I was paired with, we walked, by the way. The gentleman I was paired with was 89.
Wow.
89,
Amazing.
walking 9 holes of the golf in August.
That's
That's incredible.
what a great
Yeah.
story. 89 years
Yeah.
old.
So there's always something you could do. Always. Now
Does
he wasn't easy for him to tee the ball to get down to that, bending over or get his ball out of the hole, but he did it.
God bless him. Does
Yeah.
this hard age thing, but does it actually show the progress? Like if I were to take it 10 weeks after my initial and I've been exercising, would it show any type of difference?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're recording, from time one to time two. Absolutely.
Okay. So then you can actually see the results of your hard work.
Of course. Yeah.
Anything else with this group here that you want to mention, these products that you guys offer that you want to bring attention to?
Yeah. Fit by AI is really interesting because what that does is, we have challenges and then we have an exercise library with that. And all you have to do there is put your phone up against the wall and follow along. And this is not for those gym rats like us. It's more for the person who's not sure about how to exercise, not sure about how to use some form, but they're not going to go out and get a personal trainer. So it walks you through the different exercises and gives you real time form correction um, and motivational feedback, and then tracks those different mistakes you're making and whatnot. but it's also gamified as far as having a leaderboard. So we've deployed that at different work sites with a 30-day challenge. So every day the employee just gets a text in the morning, time to go in. Hey, you have 10,000 points already. Let's keep it going. Something a little motivational in there. They click on it and they're off to the races. They can do their exercise, follow along.
That's awesome. So maybe where we can kind of head next is your physical journey. So you mentioned how you started today with a round of 9 holes with an 89-year-old gentleman. But when we went through your bio, we read about some of your competitions. You've done the Ironman, you've done the Boston Marathon. What does your training look like? How do you even start the process of training for one of those things, and how do you actually complete it once you're doing it?
Well, I think you dip your toe in the water first, right? Like you don't start, running marathon. You have to start with like 5Ks, 5 milers, 10 milers, and it's like, okay. Then you kind of like, okay. Talking about exercise, like I, I mentioned earlier, I've been lifting weights and exercising since I was 13. Um, Yoga, but running is what sort of like the thing that if there's a few days that go by and I don't run, I get really antsy and itchy, and I need to get out and get a run in. So that's the thing that I've always gone back to in my entire adult life anyway. But how do you get to that? It's a little bit at a time. It's just a little bit at a time. Then you do the marathon, and it's like, okay, well, maybe I could do a 50 mile or an ultra, like, or maybe like, when I got to that point, a lot of it, to tell the truth, was what are some goals that scare me at this point? What are some goals that I might not be able to do? Might not be able to complete this? Because at that point, it wasn't like going back to self-efficacy. It wasn't like, all right, I can start this and I can give it my all, but like, can I get to this? Like that gets the juices flowing for me. Like, can I attain this goal?
So when you run 100 miles, how long does it take you to do that? 30 hours,
I think the cap was 30 hours. It could be something like 26.
26 hours. So
Yeah.
you don't just wake up one day and run 100 miles. You said you start out with, a much shorter distance. But when you're training, I'm assuming it's similar to like a marathon, you're starting to increase mileage each week.
Yeah. So this is how I got into the 100. I had done an Ironman. I knew some folks that were doing ultras, and when I started to think about it, it scared me. Doing a second Ironman at that point. I had done a second one after that, but at that point it was like, doesn't scare me. I know I can do it. I might do it a little faster, a little slower. Like the training, I understood what the training was about, but the 100 kind of did scare me, and that's where I was like, okay, um, let's dig into this. The most I ran in training was about 30 miles in a day, broken up over like a 20 miler in the morning and a 10 miler at night, with being on my feet all day in between, because that was important. Like, you can't just run 20 and then go sit on the couch all day. Like, you're gonna have to be on your feet for maybe a day, or a day or more. You have to be able to mentally take that. So
Yeah, that's
that's,
what you're doing.
yeah, yeah, like that. Like when I did that, it was like, okay, I'm gonna go run 20 miles before everybody gets out of bed. Then I'm gonna go coach the kids, coach a game, run around all day, and then like at 6 p.m. I'm gonna go back out for another 10 miles, and then that's just that was the training.
You're feeling
Now,
it.
part of that too is not overtraining. You have to be really careful not to. It's really easy to overtrain, and when you overtrain, like I've gone over that ledge before in marathon training or an Ironman training, where once you go over that ledge, it takes like a month or 2 months to get back. You're achy, you're overtrained, you get sniffles really, you get sick really easily, your immune system's depressed, like all these different physiological things that happen mentally. You're more susceptible to about depression. Those things all happen when you're overtrained. So you have to be really careful to find out where that edge is, to periodize your training, take that step back before you go over that ledge. Because once you're over it, it really can set you back months.
Yep, and well said, Mark. And Derek, you may have some familiarity with this, as a former, Division 1 athlete, where you look at, periodized, programs.
Mm.
And then we also look at, differentiating between, overreaching, non-functional overreaching, overtraining, and then full-blown overtraining syndrome, which is quite rare among the Gen Pop, but not too rare among high level athletes, particularly, endurance athletes, and Mark would qualify as one, and had mentioned, some of those symptoms, where you may have, parasympathetic dominance, where you have, lower blood pressure, you may have a lower heart rate, but you're also, immunocompromised. And, you're actually immunocompromised, following, an intense, training session, whether it's, aerobic or, anaerobic, for 3 to 72 hours. But imagine, now you've ramped up the volume of your training, and it's also diminished in your recoverability, because now the maximal recoverable volume is so high as you're peaking and as you're overreaching. And a lot of folks, including, some elite athletes, not to say that Mark isn't, you are, but some folks that are running, in those ultra marathons, they may have, gotten to the point of non-functional overreaching or potentially overtraining, and their health was compromised as well as their performance.
Yeah, I have actually a good story about it being immunocompromised. I
Uh,
um 7 or 8 years ago was going for a sub 3 marathon, and that was like to me like the holy grail. Like, let me see if I can get a sub 3, and I was in this shape. Um, Long story short, I missed it. I was 20 miles, 20 plus in, and then someone put a piano on my back. Um, I was 37 years old, ended up with shingles a week later.
Oh,
It was like I had this like kind of like, I wasn't sure what it was, like an itch, like kind of burning in the back. I went to urgent care and was like, you got shingles. Oh, where the hell did this come from? I'm 37, in perfect health. I just ran a marathon. Like, yeah,
oh.
my body was trashed after that.
So, how many hours does this take to train? I mean, your family must be really supportive because you have 3 kids.
What I learned when they were really young was that you can work around it by like nap time. Like if you have an infant, like, all right, if they're napping for an hour, I'm going out for that hour and I'm going to run. Or they get up at 6, you get up at 5. Like there's always something, or they go to bed. Like training for those Ironmans, like if they're going to bed at 9 o'clock, I might find a pool that's open till 11, and I'm getting that swim in at between 10 and 11. And that's the type of the sacrifices that you make.
It's your standard. But when you're
wow.
doing these trainings, you have to, I get it. Like you're resetting your standards and motivation wanes, but like it's just you. I'm going to swim from 9 to 11. Or when you're running 100 miles, like what goes through your mind at mile 77? Like, what are you thinking, like, as you're doing this?
I'll send you the race report. I think I wrote 15 pages up on
Okay.
it. And mainly for myself. I would always write race reports every year for like the larger races. Not every race I do, but like marathons and things like that, because you spend a lot of time prepping. And I would find a year or two later, I would forget most of the training or most of like what was important to me and what I was going through and sort of the milestones. So I usually, for larger things that I've spent, those endeavors where I spent a lot of time and effort on, I write up a race report. But what goes through your head is like for me, just you don't run 100 miles, you run 1 mile 100 times.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So when you're running, what is your mind thinking? Are you thinking about like you're praying? You're thinking about your family? You're thinking about your business goals? You're thinking about the race itself, one foot in front of the other. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think going back to doing the Ironmans, like mantras, like you can come up with some mantras that help you. That's like a sports psychology tactic. Like just come up with some things that you can kind of go over and over and over again that will help you. And some of those might be motivational, something short, memorable that speaks to you, that's personalized, that can help you get through that next hump or that next mile. Some of it might be form correction, like if you tend to slump, like it could just mean like, something to pull you up, pull your shoulders back, whatever it may be. And that could be different for each discipline within a triathlon. Like you might have something on the swim that you do, whatever it may be. So there's different types of mantras that you can do, whether it's motivational or form correction. Um, and honestly, don't change anything. Whatever you do in training, then take that into the actual race itself. Like that's sort of like the golden rule in any racing. Nothing new. You don't buy new shoes on the day of the marathon. Like, and break them out. Doesn't work.
So I have a question. It's a little loaded because I've never done anything like an ultra marathon. Never run 100 miles, and I'm inspired by folks that like you and obviously well more publicized. David Goggins and what he's accomplished, and he's someone that I really I look up to him in many respects. But like, what is the ideal, I guess, performance state, if you will, and how could you sustain that over, a 30-hour period?
Yes.
Like what is like what I mean, just kind of, well, like what's going through your mind, throughout 30 hours. I mean, that differs from a marathon, and certainly shorter races, and running, in training. But like, what goes through your mind in those 30 hours to keep you focused, keep you driven?
Just run the mile you're in. I mean, it's like life advice, right? Just like run the mile you're in. Like you can't look too far ahead. You can't worry about. So some of the things that were difficult for me were like you're gonna have to run at night, you're gonna have to run in the dark, and you're gonna have to run by yourself at some point. Not that I'm scared to run by myself or running in the dark, but that if you're sleep deprived and you've been out for 15, 16, 18 hours and it's dark and you're by yourself, your mind does play tricks on you. So you have to bring it back. You have to like that's all part of it. So it's not just the physical, like, and your body's gonna scream at you, stop, 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 stop. And you have to sort of have that switch to be like, nope, like you can't. So I think cumulatively, and I'm not saying this is the best because I've seen folks that lie down during an ultra and take a nap and they get back up and they run by you. But like cumulatively, I think I had 15 minutes of sitting time in that whatever 26 hours. Like, and the rest of the time was up on my feet. But that's not the best thing. Like, I probably should have run faster in hindsight because the cumulative time on your feet actually wears on you. So like I was very conservative with my pace early on because I didn't know where my body was going to be 80 miles in. So I ran a lot slower. I made it really easy. Where if I
And
did another one tomorrow, I might run a little faster for those
yeah,
first few hours.
and then also your stride mechanics too. So now you look at terminal swing, early stance. There's more ground contact time, so you are on
Yeah,
your feet.
you are.
More volume, and then also with each stride, your feet are on the ground.
And I don't
Wow.
know the answer to that. I don't know where the balance is with like what speed like so I do know from so like when the first Ironman I did, it was over 90 degrees that day.
Mm.
And like I was conservative with my pace there because I was worried about like there were people just like on the sides of the road just with IVs in their arms, like it just didn't they just bonked and it just didn't make it because it's 90 plus degrees and it's really tough to be out there all day doing that. So I was
Yeah.
really conservative with my time. And then between the first one I did and the second one I did, I was like, no, it always ate at me that could have gone faster. I was too conservative. So the one I just did in 2021, I didn't walk during the marathon. I decided, all right, I'm not walking because a lot of people will swim, hammer the bike, and then walk the whole marathon. It's like I'm not walking a marathon. I'm going to run the marathon.
It's amazing. It's totally amazing. This is otherworldly, Joe.
Yeah. No, this
No, I'm not fast.
no, I mean, Derek, you know how I kind of pride myself on being in shape, so to
Oh
speak,
yeah.
and yeah, hey, I'm fit. I could go out there, I could crush a sub 6 mile, weighing about 215, 220, whatever, like okay, I'm good. But what you do is like next level type stuff.
On
Like, I wouldn't even know where to like unpack and like begin. Like, and I have pretty, expansive, theoretical. I wouldn't even know, like, if someone said, hey, you have 6 months to prepare for an ultra, I wouldn't even know where to start. Like, even from like a standpoint of like fortitude, like I would have no idea. So like what Mark's talking about right now,
yeah.
and by no means are we sheltered, naive, people at all. We're athletes ourselves. It's almost like having, having like a professional, basketball player on here saying, yeah, yeah, whatever. I dropped 30 in a playoff game. It's just like it doesn't. I can't. I don't know. I can't digest it for some reason. It's a lot. Like just going out running 100, like it just I just it's insane. It's
It's
next level stuff.
difficult. It's
Sanity is a
difficult.
relative term.
Well, it's difficult to relate, Mark, because so much of relating is, I've had a similar experience, and I've
Yeah.
run two marathons with my sister on a country trail, like that took hours. I wasn't doing it under three, maybe it was 4 or 5 hours. I might have walked a little bit. Like it was just more leisurely as an activity to do with brother and sister. What you're talking about is like on such another level. It's that times four.
And in
It's that times
solitude.
four. And by your yeah, I was saying by yourself and all the training that leads up to it. Like there's nutrition, there's training, there's mental training, there is having support of your entire family, and there's working as a professional. Like somehow you're yeah, like Joe said, it's like it's really hard to even fathom
It's,
how much of
yeah,
an
it's
achievement it is.
it's hard to conceptualize it. You
Yeah,
know, it is like it's almost like where where you're meeting with like kind of a whatever, a STEM PhD, particularly like a math PhD. And one of my friends is a math PhD, and I'm just like, okay, like your thesis or dissertation was like 30 pages, but like I look at it, I'm just like, I don't understand it. I appreciate it, but I don't understand it at all. Like
yeah,
it's a foreign space to me. So like you have my admiration.
100%.
It's awesome, but like that's like next level intelligence. Like it's
Yeah,
something that it's hard to relate to it if anything,
I
you know.
appreciate it. I mean, I
Yeah.
would just say if there's someone who's like considering it and thinks they can do it, just just go for it. Like go crew some. Actually, the first time I was around an ultra, I crewed for somebody. So a guy I knew from Ironman, he was doing 100, and I went like his 100 was pretty cool. It was like here's a sheet with your directions. You start in Central Park and you run like around 5 boroughs and you end back up in Times Square.
Mm.
And I went and met him like in the middle of Brooklyn at like 4 o'clock in the morning and ran the last 10 miles with him. And I thought it was cool. Like, this is really, I could do this. Like, I think I could do this. Like, that was a few years before, but like, that's where I was like starting to get the itch, starting to learn a little bit more about it. Like, what happens to your like mind and body during something like an endeavor like that, and like, what does it
Yeah.
take?
amazing. Well,
Yeah.
maybe
I, I
good.
think Mark is, again, we have a small sample, but we really have a decorated lineup of presenters and speakers, and I think that Mark's story and what you've accomplished is definitely it's definitely up there. So this is really awesome stuff. So hopefully anyone that's watched, I mean, I'm leaving inspired and like I've known you for a number of years, but like now like I'm motivated. Like I'm thinking to myself, like, I dogged it, my run this morning, which was like 3.8 miles. I was like, that felt tough. And I'm like, I really didn't do much, like now we're talking about, you going out there and tackling 100 miles. And it's awesome. It's unfathomable. It's incredible. It really is.
Appreciate that. You know what I like really sort of gets me going is execution, like having a plan. Here's the plan, and then
Uh-huh.
actually executing on that plan. That like whether it's in business, personal life,
Yeah.
coaching,
Yeah.
whatever we're talking about, it's like here's the plan, and yes, you might have to pivot from it, but like actually executing because a lot of folks talk and talk and talk, but who can actually, when rubber
Yeah.
meets the road, who can execute on their plan? And I think
That's
those folks are few and far between.
incredible.
Yeah, so I mean, as we get ready to wrap things up, we'll finish with philanthropy and final thoughts. But I guess where we can relate, Joe, we don't compare, but we look at this for inspiration and appreciation, as you said. What mentally do you take from these experiences and apply to your professional career? How has it helped you? What tools are you taking from these physical feats and applying it to your work?
Well, um, just don't get down ever. Like you
Mm,
just go and go
mm.
and go and go. Somebody asked me before about the ultra, like what would you have done if you couldn't like if you got like 80 miles an hour in and you couldn't run anymore? I said, well, I would just walk. What if you couldn't walk? I said, well, then I would crawl. And they said, well, and then they realized, oh shit, we got somebody like whatever he's gonna get across that line whether he likes it or not. Like it's just gonna happen.
One way or another.
One way or another, it's happening one way or another. And
So just
that's just sort of the same way.
making that mindset up, no matter how difficult this season is personally or with business or whatever you're doing, just not stopping. Just not
Yeah,
stopping.
it's a problem solver's mentality, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
I love that.
absolutely.
Well, we talked at the outset about some of your philanthropic endeavors. I think there was four in particular. If you just want to highlight those and the work you do, why they're important to you, and what they're doing for the community.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always been interested in community work and helping out. I think we mentioned, I want to leave this place, better than I found it. Um, Coaching is probably the one that's most near and dear to my heart. I coach travel soccer, coach baseball, coach flag football, for some of my kids, and yeah, like building a culture, creating safe spaces, for watching and being a part of the development, long-term development of a group of kids. It's all great stuff. And really does feed my soul.
It's amazing. Yeah, and you feel like giving back has made your life fuller. Just you feel more at peace in everything you're doing because of it.
The interesting thing is my oldest first, I was too competitive. I didn't coach the first, like, let's say the first time I could have, I didn't throw my hat in the ring and volunteer as a coach because I was too competitive. I didn't trust myself to not be that crazy over the top guy. And when I realized I've been like a personal trainer in the past. I've done a lot of facilitating with helping people develop. Um, so I'm like, no, I could do this, and I'm not going to be over the top. And that's where, like, the next chance I got, I threw my hat in the ring, and then ever since then, it's like off to the races.
That's amazing. Well, we covered a lot today. Joe and Mark, what final thoughts do you want to share before we leave?
Think it'd be appropriate, Mark closes out on this one. It's really been, just a pleasure to sit down today and share, really meaningful and impactful chat, about all things related to, health and wellness and how we can, support and empower those in our community, whether, they're organizations that we serve, whether they're, friends, neighbors, members of our family. So this is really, really good. And I'm leaving this time together, just learning about, Mark's story, leaving this meeting, inspired and reinvigorated for sure.
It's awesome, Joe. Appreciate it. I would just say for anyone listening who, just wants to create some healthy behaviors. You don't have to go out and run a marathon. Go out and go for a walk around the block. Go out and just do little things. I'm a huge proponent of these tiny habits. So if you're familiar with BJ Fogg's work, um, just do something small, and then you can build on that. You can do one push up. You can do one little thing, and then from there it builds. Right, your self efficacy builds your confidence with what you can achieve. It just builds from there. So that's what I would say. Start small, but be consistent, and you can achieve great things.
I love it. What a great message. And there's so much you said, Joe, today that we leave with. Don't let a lapse turn into a relapse, and don't focus on perfection. I do hope that people listen to this show today and they leave inspired, not to necessarily compare themselves to anybody else, but to say, how can I improve incrementally and be better than I was yesterday? I think that's a really good take. And as always, our organization is focused on food insecurity, on hunger, on creating healthier lifestyles and habits so that we can live a more engaged and fulfilled life. At the end of the day, we're all in this together. So I think there are so many good parts of wisdom that you were able to share with us that we can apply. And keeping that mindset focused on how can we help other people. You said the safe places and, you know, what can our contribution be? Because at the end of the day, we all have a finite period of time in our day and in our life, like a battery. And when that time's over, we can't do anything more. But while we're here, we have an ability to impact the lives of others that are suffering and in pain. So I thank you, Mark and Joe, for taking time out of your schedule to be with us today. For all those that are listening, we'll make sure we share some information in the summary, the description. So we'll include your website, Mark, and also some of those studies, Joe. Maybe you can shoot them over to me, especially that one with the professor about the heart improving
Do
the
that in
air.
the chat about aortic stiffness. Yep.
That might be a separate one we can do together too. I was just thinking about that. But anyway, thank you for joining us today on the F4 Hunger Awareness Show. We had our guests Mark Mulray and Joseph Giandonato. We look forward to having you with us next time.